The ghostly effect. People ask me sometimes what kind of poetry I write, and I can never answer that. I have no idea how one does begin to answer that, or what kind of poetry they imagine exists. But principally, my poems are concerned or prompted by being alive, being a conscious entity, and that strange feeling of everything's real and somehow is intangible. So that's really it. And I'll read the first poem in the book, The Ghostly Effect, which is kind of about that, but not quite. The Ghostly Effect. I want to believe in the reality that hangs as a backdrop to ecstasy or despair. Wavering images of humans float in puddles, in dark canals at the end of rows of boarded houses, bright reflections of upended shopping trolleys ripple in murky water. We are only the history of ourselves. I examine the flow of minutes as if to verify I'm happening, as time invents extraordinary dragonflies and sunsets. Second poem I want to read is, we live almost next to a piece of woodland and open ground that was once part of an Anglo-Saxon king's hunting forest. And this happened there one morning well, possibly last year, I'm not sure. The mist. I stood very still among the stark tree trunks, against which a drifting mist collided silently. The dark outlines of trees simplified everything. The mist was time passing, eternity made visible. I was softly transfixed. I was trees and mist. I was drifting away from myself into the minimal wood, into reality as a dream. I was hushed into its quiet, the appalling beauty of it, bound to the blankness of mist, as to the great amnesia. My reason was numbed by the implausibility of being and not being. I mind a struggle to escape the moment, and the trance broke. Walking away through the trees, I was only the sound of my footsteps, but that was enough. The next poem, I've never written poems about, we spend a lot of time looking around gardens, as Christine is a keen gardener. And I've never written poems about a garden, but I was waiting for Christine for some reason, and I was looking at this garden which is stretched out in front of us. And I sort of formed an idea that I wanted to write about it, but I didn't know how I was going to go about it. So I invented somebody to walk down the garden, and somebody rather took over. Unknown. Who she was and where she came from, nobody knew. Only that they saw her in the afternoon heat many years ago. She had walked down the sloping path next to the red brick wall covered in magnolia, past flower borders, the cypress, the cedar, classical urns and sundial, a huddle of dark pines, past where the spray from the ornamental fountain had darkened the path, and shepherdess, nymphs and satyr gestured from stone plinths. She was lost to sight near the ruined church and was never seen again. Gardeners straightened up from what they were doing as she went on her way. They would never forget her, but couldn't explain why. She looked old-fashioned, they said, and was smiling. When I was a small boy at primary school, and we had a free period, I would read a book. And I chose to read a rather unusual book. But it is an interesting book. I recommend it to you because it contains in it the answer to the question, what is the meaning of life? If you look it up in the book, you'll find that it tells you the meaning of life is life, because it's a dictionary. And I used to sit and read the dictionary, which is a long-winded way of going about telling you that the next poem is called The Art of Being Alive. The art of being alive is seeing things and knowing what you see. It can take a lifetime to master complex skills, but seeing what's in front of you and knowing it is the difficult thing. Lady's mantle, growing out of a crack in a collapsing wall, is easy to pass by. Trees painting a house front with splashes of fluid shadow. A gate hanging lopsided as a bird's broken wing. Time's message displayed on a church tower or on the grey certainties of public buildings is of no significance if glanced at quickly. Even the faded brilliance of a daytime moon is a beauty too silent to be paid attention to, in a wilderness of things too obvious to see. There's a field behind us, and it's often full of crows. And I'm rather fond of crows. They're sinister sort of creatures, but I kind of like them, but it's a kind of love-hate relationship, I suppose. So this is my poem to a crow. Oh, crow, it's called. Oh, crow, pecking at the carcass of the field, just so's you know, I'm watching you. I'm not dapper like you are, but my eyesight's good, and I'm stealthy. Don't ignore me just because I'm softly spoken. With all day at my disposal, I'm watching you. I might get my binoculars to see your sleekest detail. Don't say you haven't been told. I've got my eye on you. When you sit humpbacked in a tree, watching me, I'm watching you. And be warned, the dark at the back of my mind is darker than your sinister coat. Your funereal, I did that wrong. Darker than your sinister stare, your funereal coat. You are a corvid, but I am human, and humans laid waste to a planet. Know this, some might think you are bad with your love of a corpse, but I'm far worse, and I'm looking straight at you right now. And to finish off this section of my reading, another bird poem goes back some long way. And it's something that took place in the little lane that leads up to shot over near us. And the bird concern was a little owl, Athene noctua, I think they call. The owl incident. In the shade of the lane, late one summer afternoon, years ago, I remember a little owl, its gaze wide open as a field. Since when, quiet as its flight feathers, the moment has flown from memory. I want to return to those owl-infused coordinates, the bird their only certainty. But all there is a mind-etched forgery under a sky that might be myth or legend. All that remains is owl. The village's day was, I imagine, as ordinary as any other. A mechanic in the garage finishing off a car, rubbing greasy hands on grimy overalls. Someone in the post office buying stamps. The parish in all its simplicity. Time moves slowly as the shadows of trees, and the past, sealed inside the mind, is far distant. When you put together a book of poems, it's always a bit of a surprise as the things that you didn't realize you were doing. With the last book, it was an awful lot of bird poems, and there are a few in this one, but this time it seems to be to do with myths and legends. So I'll read a few of those. And the first one comes from when I draw the curtains in our bedroom at night, there's a light up on the hillside opposite. Now, I've never really worked out exactly where it is, but this is a reflection on the light. The light stares back at me as I close our bedroom curtains, embedded in the dark opposing hillside. Its shine goes beyond a useful purpose, feels as if it pleads with me to answer its urgent request. Porch light of isolated house, or solitary illumination of a dirt-deep farmyard, whose desolate outlines were abandoned there by nightfall. It's settled down to be the one bright thing. The night's cold haunts my thoughts as they stagger towards its persistent signal, beamed from whatever outpost it belongs to. It feels like the light that shines behind mind's shadow. I imagine its gleam settling like snowfall on the fur of a passing fox who stopped to consider a landscape that is neither now nor here, but another time and place, where a light burns at the edge of a valley of myths. And this next poem we're all kind of myth in a way. Part of our life is part real and partly made up. So it's called I Am a Myth. Images flow into my head through wide open eyes to become the grandeur and ruins of what I've seen, are fugitive as soon as they cross the glassy emptiness of seeing and slip out of sight into borderlands, soon to be lost inside mind's cramped vision of infinity. They appear later in the half-light of a fading memory, or step naked and drug-bright from the fever of a dream. They have been kept captive in the drab unreality of cognitive backstreets, blackened red brick terraces, where yellow light from corner shops is alchemic on the leaden surfaces of roads that lead nowhere. in continuous darkness, under the irregular shine of synaptic stars, I know that everything is conditional and awkwardly relative in the fiction of who I am. And the next one is a take on the Middle Eastern stories of Sinbad the Sailor. So I've added to it slightly. Sinbad drowning, which I think I was to do with consciousness and that current of the unconscious world that flows underneath it and is partly responsible for creative matters. Sinbad drowning. Under the weight of my weightlessness, I descend the steep and swirling sea to splintered wrecks and the crushed ghosts of those already drowned. I am a cargo of ill at ease, awkwardness, and false starts, yet haunted by the turn and turnabout of shimmering shoals. I quickly turn into sunken treasure. Where sea monsters might pick me ragged to the bones, I drift to an insensate standstill, becoming softly embedded in the undersea, where I should drown. But I breathe in oceans and survive. Water's voices, light and clear, or a ghost of its heavy load, sing to the distant call of the moon's unsteady transformations. Whatever it is that life beneath the surface is working to expose, the water's pressure propels me back, swaddled in bubbles, full of conversations with the deep. And another mythical place, dreamed up presumably by Plato, Atlantis. Everybody's looked for it since, I don't know why. Atlantis. Wealthy land householders tried to decipher a tumult of cries and agile conversation rising from the street. They fear the hubbub of faceless people, but bear lightly the ferocity of light and heat. Outside, shadows stride across uneven walls. The poor, who know so much more than the rich, will not lead them towards the safety of a ramshackle freedom in the chaos of overcrowded alleys. The king and queen, heavily crowned and overdressed with power, are compelled to dream the myths that made them. They wake with a shout, walled up in the palace's gaudy imaginings, where they spoil their sons, who see only minor strategies in their mind's gold mirror. Pale, exalted daughters read poems aloud, struggle with dilapidated meaning, and slowly starve. As time is measured in forebodings that their lives will never be real enough to last, that disaster comes slowly from within. I don't know if I've got time for just one more. Legendary. We were born to havoc, a man's world of sweat and threat, a time of complicated, aggressive dreams. The landscape was parched, all boulders, plants that lived on next to nothing, and dried up riverbeds. The pure blue skies were perfect for the flight of scavengers. We wore their dizzying shadows over our heads with pride. The towns were dusty and given to disquiet. It was best not to look comrades in the eye. The polished weaponry of a glance could slash you. Our dangerous leaders thrilled us, always new populations to conquer, whose simple subsistence we garlanded with hardship. But despite all this, some of us survived and lived to a great age, or even worse, fell in love. Sort of the latter part of my book has a few oddities in it, sort of strange poems. This one came, I think, you know how they tell you don't eat certain things if you're about to go to bed because it will give you funny dreams. Well, I've been reading a book on quantum mechanics, and you know, the idea of spooky entanglement where particles can be sort of linked together over huge distances and influence one another. Well, this poem is called Entanglement, and it came because I don't understand quantum mechanics, but it came at the time I was reading this book for the second time about quantum mechanics. I still don't understand it. Anyway, it's called Entanglement, and it's kind of odd. Entanglement. Somewhere inside my thoughts, I am coming in from the rain. A detective at a desk in my mind stays there long after everyone else has gone. He's obsessively playing over and over indistinct CCTV of someone who might be me coming in from the rain. He looks for something he can't pin down, some detail others failed to see, difference between innocence or guilt. Watches me come in from the rain, a shadow among shadows as time flows by like an androgynous god. I'm asleep at an unspecified address in sleep's reality. A mediocre room, beyond which an unfamiliar street, drenched in rain, is held in the gaze of tall, disinterested street lamps. I'm tormented by an image of me, continually coming in from the rain. Believe my mind is coming to arrest me. I wait for its car to pull up, footsteps, a knock on the door, denouement. I had to put in a poem about the Chilterns because I spent so much time walking there and I love it so much. And this particular walk was one that Christy and I made up just from knowing the territory we were walking over. And it takes in the prehistoric ditch, Grimm's Ditch, a prehistoric earthwork. Autumn walk. The trees are tall guardians, but cannot intervene. Their leaves' slow burn is somber in the mist. In a field, a breed of black sheep are dark outlines. Crows stalk the spaces between them. Other crows scrape the sky raw with their sound. Cold air touches us with a prehistoric hand. I know we are intruders, that we are the real phantoms in any imagined landscape. My mind prattles nervously in an ancient language of bone, antler, and flint. The sky, brightening unexpectedly, is a revenant sign saying, "Stranger, be on your way." I stumble down the gully's fissure, pushed and shoved by my own erratic progress. We stop where there are no crows, only a small opening of sunlight in the austere ecology of silence. Last but one poem. Tonight. Tonight, what there is of the world other than the cleverness of electricity and the finite mysteries of plum trees I do not know. Night commences its transformations, and I imagine a blank-faced X or Y, much like me, strolling across a suburban lawn that's already becoming somewhere else, yet to be determined. Where once there were flower beds, there's nothing he can recognize, only an absence of geranium and iris, potentilla, rosemary and lavender. The privet hedge is already missing in the undergrowth of the world. He looks up at the stars, his face so expressionless. It's as if he's not there. What he knows of tranquility or believes things mean is unknown to me. I see him gazing into the spaciousness beyond the stars. And the last poem I will read. I do like sort of a certain regularity. I like things to run to a kind of timetable, in common with, I think, with a lot of people who are on the autistic spectrum. And this is one of my favorite ones. And this is seen from, this is my morning sort of procedure, seen from on a winter's morning. Before it starts, I might be thinking of electricity or the Milky Way. I flick the light switch. The observance begins. I put yesterday's dry crockery away, and knives, spoons, and forks, with care not to drop or break anything. I lay the table for our breakfast, then open the curtains. I move at a measured pace, one moment, the next, and the next are questions and explanations. It is dark, but I feel sure the sky still exists. My face stays solemn, but thoughts smile at this. I wonder whether life is a poem or a poem is life, and vow to try to solve that problem later. I pour my orange juice, take a sip, open the kitchen door and stand in the chilly doorway to listen to the birds sing. They confirm the sky is still there. I say good morning to the birds out of politeness and with thanks, then go slowly but with quiet purpose to finish yesterday's poem or begin today's. For a moment, life is as simple as this.